Hi everyone, good evening to Developer Circles community in Jerusalem, Kiev, and Rome, a collaboration event. So hello, shalom, privyet, and ciao. We are here today, the four of us, me, Tomka, Maria, and Enzo from the Developer Circle community. As part of our Circles community global community challenge. And with us, we have Olga to talk about our event today, which is about Crowdin. Olga?
Yep. Good evening to everyone. I'm really excited to be here today to be able to chat about localization with you guys. I'm really open to any kind of questions, and I really hope that tonight we're going to have some fun, get some, I don't know, new insights, and and just get it started, I guess. This is the first slide of my presentation. So, before we start talking about localization, I would really just, share a few words about me and maybe my company that I work for right now. I'm Olga. I work for Crowdin company. We've been on the market more than for 10 years. And here you can actually check like few of our clients. Crowdin is localization management tool. It's a SaaS service. So basically, it's not only the documentation localization we're going to talk today about, but it's also web apps, mobile apps localization, knowledge-based localization, design localization, like mockups and everything. Basically, anything that you as a developer would need to localize, right? So let's get straight to the point. Before we look into the deep, I would say so. I just would like really to share like few basic things, maybe for those people who are not familiar with localization like at all. And I would start, with the basic project roles, like what kind of responsibilities people have, in the localization circle. So first of all, localization, it's not only about translators, right? It's also about project managers, proofreaders, developers, definitely, designers, and basically any team member, who can help and, somehow manage the process. So first, we're going to talk about translators' role, people who translate from the basic language or the source language to the target locales. Then we have a proofreader, somebody who takes care of existing translations. Usually translator and proofreader it makes a perfect combination. They usually work together. Then we have a project manager role, a person who would basically handle team members, right? Get in touch, deliver tasks on time and everything, plus the resources like the source files, translation memory, glossary, and basically anything that team would need, to have in supply in order to do their job. So in terms of the resources, first thing on the list for today, it would be about the source files, right? Source files, it's basically the files we need to translate, again, from our source language to the target language. Source files, they consist of the keys, like identifiers, and source values that we kind of get from our code, like localization elements that we need to translate. At this point, I guess I should also say that Crowdin is file-based system, so we usually expect files to be uploaded into Crowdin, but we also can work with a single keys, like you can also push single keys for localization and get it back. The suggestion simply the proposed translation, because definitely in the localization projects, especially in Crowdsource projects, you can have multiple translation suggestions, added to a single string, and then you would need to pick up the one, right? Because like we can only integrate one translation for one source value. Then we have approvals. Approval, it's a job of the proofreader, because proofreader reviews the translation, and if it's perfect, we put a validation check mark saying, okay, it's cool, we take it into production. Vote system. It's a special thing when translators can vote, upvote or downvote for translations made by other people, by other translators in the project. It's usually very, very popular in crowdsource projects where translations are being, done by volunteers, because, in a companies like private companies, we know they do the localization, they usually have their own in-house translators, or they have the translation, agency that does all of the stuff for them. So both system, it's usually very popular for crowdsourcing. Then we have translation memory. Basically, it's a set of previously translated texts. Let's say 10 years ago, I translated a word, and then 10 years after I submit the same source value or a similar source value, Crowdin would remember everything, every single word, every single phrase that was ever translated in Crowdin project, and then you can reuse these translations all over again. And glossary, basically a dictionary, it's a set of project-specific terms. You might ask, what are the specific terms in localization, right? But usually it depends on field. For example, if we translate some, I don't know, medicine stuff, we would have some, medical terms to be translated the same way across all of, let's say, the application, right? When we talk about the games localization, it might be, some specific names of the, I don't know, levels, features, whatever stuff we have. If it's, I don't know, documentation localization, it might be, very specific terms dedicated to options, to integrations, to a lot of different stuff. Okay, here we go. And right now, let's get into the point. And before we would talk about documentation, I've got second slide on the list. I would first like really much to talk about the general localization process for applications. Web application, mobile applications like Android and iOS systems. And here I got I've got a list here, like a list of differences between localization of the applications and localization of documentations. In order to show you that, I'd like to get into Crowdin project right now. I've got one prepared on my own. I forked Visual Studio Code documentation to talk about that. And before looking into that, I would really like to show you how Crowdin handles the very general and very common application localization. So thing we've got right now, it's a Crowdin project. It's a view of the resources, like the source files uploaded into Crowdin for localization. I mentioned that Crowdin is a file-based system, and it's very true. We also support a lot of different file types, JSON, Android, XML, whatever framework you guys using. You can simply upload, your source file into Crowdin. We would automatically recognize it. We would automatically segment it based on the keys. If it's a key value file type, then basically one key would be considered in Crowdin as one segment for localization. So, if talking about the difference between app localization and documentation localization, applications, they all consist of very short messages, very short terms that we are supposed to translate, right? I guess we would never come across the key from the application, which would be 10 sentences long, right? It's not possible. So, for example, here, we would always see, middle or very short keys that we are supposed to translate from our application. We don't need to have a connection between those keys, it's a demo, it's an option about customers, it's an option how to create a project, different buttons. So these are the short texts, and they are not being connected with each other. We don't need to learn we don't need to learn translation for this key in order to provide translation for another key. But in documentation, right, when we translate guides, tutorials, articles, it's crucial to be able to recognize, okay, if this is the beginning of the of my article that I'm translating, and this is the end. And in order to provide the best translation, I would need to see the context, right? I would need to see the quality, the coherence between those segments. So this is a main difference in terms of the text. Documentation, it's always long segments of text, very static text, which are not usually, updated or changed. We have an article, we translate it, we push the localized version for, into the production, and that's it. We almost never come back, to change something in the article. And in Crowdin, we've got this special preview option for tutorials and guides. Usually they are being handled through Markdown, HTML, docx files. It's not only, the articles and tutorials, it's also blogs, knowledge bases, I don't know, anything, that would consist very static, big amount of text of content for translation. So in Crowdin, we have this preview option when each segment is being connected with the previous segment. And this way, for translators, it's really easy to understand, like the connection between those things, and provide a good quality translation for the whole article. And what is better, it's also possible to preview the translation you're doing. For example, if I would translate this very segment into, let's say, Japanese language, and I would click this magic icon, I would see, I would see already localized Japanese version right here in Crowdin for me for the translator. And this way I can, I can have a whole picture, like the whole puzzle for me. So I would understand that, okay, my job is done. It looks nice. It's all clear. And, coherence of the text is being preserved. While in the application localization, we simply work, on separate strings not being connected to each other. But in this case, whenever we work on single strings, the context is being really, really important for us. For example, I'm translating the product and I'm like, okay, what is the context of this string? Like, product of what? Is it like a web product, mobile product? Like, what is the product? And for this purpose, in Crowdin, it's also possible to link screenshots, like extra information, just like that. So when I'm translating as a translator, I can always open the screenshot and look at the key, at the option, at the pop-up, whatever I'm translating, and see like, oh, it's a landing page. Okay, I got it. I mean, I'm translating that. Plus, in the app localization, it's really important to translate, those keys, the source values, in accordance to the source text in terms of the max length. Like, let's say we translate from English to German, right? And we know that German language usually have really long nouns, and usually like the verbs and nouns, they're, a bit longer than in English. So while I'm translating, I might be like really, worried about the length issues. Maybe my German translation would not be, would not fit if I'm translating a button, right? Maybe German localization would not fit simply into the size. So as a developer and as a project manager, you guys can set max limit to the proposed translation. For example, if we have a button demo and then we don't want our translator, to translate it too long for German. We might say that it's like 4 characters max, and translator will not be able to exceed this limit. For example, if I'm trying to translate something like this and I'm trying to save it, Crowdin would tell me, hey, your translation is too long. Please stick to the max length set by your project manager or by your developer. And well, I will need to think a bit, just in order to match those requirements. Or if as a translator, I'm not really, I do not agree about this limitation, I can always, ping my manager right here saying, hey guys, increase the limit for me. It's not possible, to fit it into those few characters. Okay. And what else? HTML tags, placeholders, plurals, and ICU syntaxes. It's again for application localization. Apps localization, it's all about dynamic text, right? I mean, we have new keys deployed, then our content manager, can see, oh, it's a typo there. Let's update source tags and update localization for them. So in Crowdin, it's really easy to update source files. Again, it might be done manually. It might be done through the integrations like API or GitHub. But idea is that that if we work with dynamic content, we might have frequent updates, and we might have such things as variables and placeholders. So in Crowdin, we do recognize those styles automatically. Whenever we have a placeholder, basically any dynamic content, we highlight it, and we usually give a hint to the translator that this specific variable, like dynamic text, should not be translated. So as a translator, I should realize, oh, okay, maybe I should not really touch it, or maybe I should not really translate it literally. Again, we're talking about, right now, I'm talking about crowdsource projects. Whenever it's not a translation agency, who's skilled to handle those kind of things, but maybe the volunteers who help you with your app's localization, they might not know what is the variable, what is HTML tag. So in Crowdin, we would try to help those people to provide best quality translations, and then we would try to save it. Oh, I got length issues here. I'm going to just to get rid of it. So whenever I'm trying to save the translation that might have some broken tags, or even that might have some, mistakes in terms of the variables and placeholders, Crowdin would also tell me, hey, please have another look. Maybe something, could be improved and everything. So one thing that we automatically highlight HTML placeholders and HTML tags and placeholders, basically any dynamic content, and we give a hint to the translator that this kind of thing should not be literally translated, but simply preserved in the translation area. We also handle such stuff as plurals and ICU syntax. For example, some file types like Android XML, getXPO files, they support pluralization forms. So we can generate one key, but with the different types of the plurals translation to provide. And if, let's say, in this project, I do have English as a source language. So I uploaded this particular key to be translated into what I have here, German, Arabic, and Japanese. So Crowdin automatically recognized that this is a pluralization. And for German language, we know that German locale does have two plural forms, singular one and other for plurals. So what we do, we automatically provide translator with two options. So translation for both plural and singular forms, can be submitted. If we're talking about, let's see, Arabic language, Crowdin automatically recognized that for this particular language, it's actually the 6th plural form that are supposed to be entered right here. So translator would need to know that, okay, I need to provide 6 variants because this is a singular, and then this is the plurals. But plurals, of course, they have different stuff like too, few, many other forms, to cover those pronouns and everything. Yep. For those file types that do not natively support pluralization, because it depends not on the not on the platform like Crowdin, but actually on the file format itself and its documentation. For those file types that do not support pluralization, Crowdin have another thing. It's ICU syntax that can be implemented basically in any file type, including spreadsheets, JSON, I don't know, YAML files, whatever comfortable for you. And then using this ICU syntax, we can also handle plural forms, and we can handle, all of the gender-specific details, currency details, all of it together. Definitely, all of this stuff, it does not simply exist in documentation localization, because in documentation we have, like a static article with no placeholders. There might be some HTML text as well, but no placeholders, no variables, no pluralization, no ICU syntax rule, and that's it. Okay, and for the application localization, we also, the context, yeah, I mentioned that. And for the documentation localization, yeah, I also mentioned the preview. So maybe just, just to sum it up, like the documentation localization and application localization differs in few ways. First one is that documentation, it's all about the long segments of text. We have long segments of text, each linked to each other. So in order to provide the best quality translation, translators would need to have coherence of the text, would need to have a preview to follow from the very first segment to the last one, and make sure they have a good translation. For application localization, it's a bit simpler, in terms of the text, because it's short text, not connected to each other. We can have context, like special screenshots, to provide good translations, but in this way, it's easier. But then it comes to placeholders, then it comes to the HTML tags and plurals and ICU forms. These are the pitfalls, if I might say so, of the localization of applications, because usually it's really hard to cover that from the very beginning, especially if you're a newbie to localization. But as far as it gets, I would say that like systems like Crowdin, they are usually prepared, to handle all those subtleties, and it's really cool if you could, just add all of these elements, from the very beginning. Okay, let's get further. Oh, machine translations. It's a special topic for today, because I guess localization nowadays does not really happen without machine translations. based on my experience and based on the customers and on the project that we have here in Crowdin, I would say that almost everybody, like 90% of the customers, are using machine translations, not because they are lazy or they do not have an agency, to translate, but this is like the very basic things in our time. Nobody wants to translate, everything from scratch without having a hint or without having, a tip. So machine translations here in Crowdin, actually, they provide this base. They provide this, start point for translators, just to jump straight to the process. And in Crowdin, we have few machine integrations that you can actually choose from. It's Google, it's Microsoft, it's IBM, it's Amazon. Actually, I'm going to show you guys what we have here. Microsoft, Google, also Google AutoML, Yandex, DeepL, Watson, IBM, Amazon Translate, and the last one but not the least, it's Crowdin NMT, Crowdin Translate Engine. It's our own machine translation provider. We have our own data scientists in the department, the guys who are working on the engine. I would say it's a young thing. It's a young machine provider, but it's really cool, and we keep improving that. Keep adding the language pairs, so they would be available for different kind of languages. And you can use this machine provider, Crowdin Translate, for free. And it looks like this way. Translators work on their untranslated text, and instead of doing everything on their own, like typing everything, they would have those hints right here. For German language, it would be German localization. For Japanese, it would be Japanese. And this way, we can actually, make the whole work easier. We can save time. We can save money, because nowadays it's getting popular simply to pre-translate all your files using machine translations, and then just pay the proofreader to review all those machine translations, making sure all of them are okay. I'm a big fan of machine translations, actually, and I would not claim that all of them are perfect or something, but it's really given that machine translations, they are really good for small segments of text, like for titles, for buttons, for some short elements, which are usually, they're usually happening in the localization of the applications. They might be not so cool for documentation localization, because we've got this, long segments of text, and it's not always the case that machine translation would be the perfect one. But anyway, it's a great, it's really a great way to just to save a little bit of time and maybe a little bit of money by using machine translations. Plus, it's a really cool thing for pseudo localization. Like, if you just maybe, you're not sure whether you want to start with localization, or maybe you just want to have a look how approximately Chinese localization of the English version would look like. Why not to pre-translate everything through machine engine, integrate it somewhere like on a mirror project or something, and this way understand, how does Chinese, how does French, how does German localization would look like, at least, like the preview. So it's also popular nowadays with this kind of things. So as I mentioned, in Crowdin, we've got Crowdin Translate. It's a young engine, but it's really cool. And instead of using this machine translation for every single key, in Crowdin we get such option as pre-translation. It means you can just pick up the source files in your project, pick up the languages, and run the whole machine pre-translation for the whole bunch of files. I'm actually going to run one right now. Let me pick up this one, and yep, let's see what we'll have here. So what I did just right now, I just ran machine pre-translation for my three languages, Arabic, German, and Japanese, using Crowdin NMT. So I'm waiting, till it's done, and then I just, want you guys to have a look how it would look like. Okay. While it's in the process, I would also like to say that the Crowdin NMT machine provider can be used, alongside with other machine translators, because a lot of our customers, they use different kinds of machine providers to cover their the content. For example, the Microsoft Make Code team, they also got their project placed here in Crowdin. And if we would just look through the different kind of locales, they have different percentage because it's an open project where volunteers help with translations. But also Microsoft team, they use both Microsoft Translate and Crowdin NMT Translator to pre-translate those short segments, those languages that they can cover. Oh, I'm not a member of Italian translation, so I'm going to stick to another locale right here. By the way, guys, you're more than welcome to join, all of the open projects that we have here in Crowdin. They also include Docusaurus project, and as you can see, not a lot of the locales have 100% translations. So I think they would be really, excited to have some, some help from the developer circle developers. The same for Django Girls and Minecraft team. All of these projects, they are open. Anybody can join and help with translations. Okay, cool. I think that it's done, actually, my pre-translation. So let's see how it would look like for the translated files. Maybe not in this language, maybe just in another one. So the whole idea of the machine translators is that they are easy, they are cheap, and it's definitely a good point, just to start with your localization right away. Okay. Crowdsource localization. It's my favorite topic for today because nowadays crowdsource localization is becoming more and more popular. And I think personally that it's really cool when you can actually translate your application through the help of your fans, through the help of people, who use your application, who play your games, who just love the programs, who love the application that you do. And here in Crowdin, it's definitely possible to have your open source project created, developed, and deployed. One of the examples might be the Discord team. They have their the Discord platform here in Crowdin, open for everybody to join and help. And once they actually finished it, I think the last year they fully translated all of the languages using just the help of their fans, of their users. And right now, I think their website is already like multilingual, and they have like really a lot of languages, something about 20 languages or even more, if I'm not mistaken. Another example of a great crowdsourced localization project, it might be like Microsoft community, who help to translate and keep helping to translate the Minecraft team. They have also like really nice description and a lot of instructions for their translators. So whenever you join into the crowdsource projects, you can see that, for example, Ukrainian language is like 100% translated, but we also have like some place for validations. And let's actually open and see what we have here. So crowdsource translation, what it is, as it's stated on my slide, it's a project where translation is not being provided by the translation agency, but instead it's being done by the volunteers, by the fans of the application, games, and programs with no financial reward. No financial reward, but still we usually those crowdsourced projects, they have some rewards for their top contributors, for their top translators. For example, like my Minecraft team, they had, if I'm not mistaken, some perks. They did give their top members, their top contributors, those capes, like special perks in a game. I've never played Minecraft, so I don't know, but I know that translators, they were pretty excited about that, and there were like a lot of people who were really doing great translations, really dedicating their time. So I think that crowdsourcing, it's actually also one of the ways to create your own community, maybe not even to create, but expand your community of users, share some context, networking, between translators, between different people involved into localization. So the project we can see here, it's a Minecraft project right now. It's Ukrainian localization, and as you can see, almost all source values are being, translated and proofread. Under this section, we've got volunteers chatting, asking questions, I don't know, talking about context, maybe best translations, discussing something. And for crowdsourcing, I just want to say that here in Crowdin, we've got a special voting system. Because if you guys, a private company, and you hire a translation agency who do everything, translate, proofread, make sure translations are the best, and only those best translations would be taken from, let's say, Crowdin and integrated to the website or application, whatever. In Crowdsource, we just have a big community of people who are not really translators, but who are fans of your application and who are able to help. It means that if you're a project owner, right, and you're having your app translated through the Crowdsource, you don't have like this middle level. You have translators, you have the management part, but you don't have proofreaders, right? I mean, how you can know that, let's say, this Ukrainian localization is good? I mean, we don't know Ukrainian, right? So in Crowdin, we have a special voting system. For example, if we can see that any specific key has multiple translations, like a lot of people are submitting, a lot of people are proposing, and we're not sure like what to choose, what translation, to pick up. Because obviously, for one key, we would always need, one translation. We don't need to have 10 translations with a single source value. But in systems like Crowdin, it's always possible to provide various variants of translation, which we can see right now here. And if you, as a crowdsourced translator, as a volunteer, you join the project, you want to help, but everything is already translated, you can still help, and you can do actually the proofreading job. So instead of translating, you come and you just vote for those translations that you like the best. And this way you give a hint to the project managers, to the people who host the project, that this very translation is the best one. It's, definitely should be taken for the production. And basically you can ignore the rest of the translations, right? So for Crowdsource, we do have a special voting system, and which is more important, we also have a special way of managing those things which happen in crowdsource projects. These are usually the abusive stuff. When we're talking about the crowdsource, we're talking about public project exposed to everybody on the web who can join and translate. In Crowdin, you can actually choose strategies. You can have fully open project where everybody could join with no approval, with no regulations. Another option would be to have a project where volunteers can join, but they would need to submit, like a request that project manager would need then to approve. So basically, you can do the crowdsource fully opened, but still as a manager, you can control, who's joining your project. And for example, Codor team, they're doing that. You cannot simply, join and translate. You would need to submit a request. Even sometimes you can write a short paragraph why you want to join, why you want to translate, what is your contribution in the project. But for those projects which are, fully exposed to community, to everybody, we have such thing as report abuse stuff. If you have hundreds of people who would like to translate, there is always a chance that somebody would join and maybe, just have some fun, not really translate, but, simply submit some, different stuff. If you notice that in crowdsource projects, there are people who are not really interested in submitting translations, who are not passionate about, helping with localization, and they, they provide bad quality translations, or they raise some, discussions right here in comment section, or they, submit some abusive comments, you can always report abuse for this particular user. I mean, not for the particular one, of course, but, for anybody you would notice is not doing a good job. And project manager can always find this person and either delete them from the project, so they would not be able, to translate anymore, or they can even block those people, so they would not even be able to join again. Basically, they're like blocked forever from the project. They're not able, to do anything. So it might be a bit tough, but especially for big projects like Minecraft, it's really necessary to have this kind of option for project managers, for coordinators, because, this way we make sure only good people stay in the project. They do their best, while those who are not really interested, might spend their time, in other places. Okay. Translators and proofreaders, quality control and reward for active volunteers. Quality control. It's actually the thing I've been talking about. It's all about this upvote and downvote systems. So project coordinators could pick up the best translations in those languages they do not understand and those languages they cannot translate. And for the presents and rewards, for your top volunteers, well, definitely they don't get financial rewards if it's a crowdsourced project, but it might be any perks if you have, game localization. If it's an educational project or simply web app application localization, it might be a Twitter, a Facebook post saying, hey, thank you, Julia, thank you, John, for being so awesome and providing, the best of translations you can. It might be a goodies package you can send to your top contributors saying, thank you guys, for helping and everything. It might be a certificate or a recommendation letter. It's topical for young volunteers, like students, who don't have a lot of experience, but they rely on the recommendation letter, for their CV and everything. So there are a lot of different ways to say thank you for your volunteers without paying them, like the financial reward. And basically that's what we have in Crowdin. I mean, each project, they have special thanks, they have special ways, of telling people that they really appreciate their work. We also have electron projects from GitHub. They also translated, I guess, almost everything, or they, or maybe they on the finish line, I'm not sure, but they also have very strong community, who help with translations, both translating and proofreading those suggestions. So it's really cool. Okay, RTL languages localization. Oh, I know that it's a nice subject to talk about because it's based on my experience. It's really hard to cover, RTL languages on the market, and usually there are no, there is no perfect way, how to handle it sometimes. But in Crowdin, we also have a special thing, like a special mirror display for RTL languages, including Hebrew, Arabic, Persian, and and other languages. So I really hope that for people, who work with RTL, it's convenient and it's nice to work with those languages. Plus, we always, open for the feedback. We always want strive to make, the view and everything even better. So if you guys, want to participate in RTL localization, or you have your project being localized into RTL, in Crowdin for your translators, it would be this kind of mirror view. So people could, could just translate the way they can and save the translation, and it would be comfortable for them to work, to work this way. Because, for let's say for European languages, for example, for German, it's a bit different view. It's like that. I mean, like for the European market, but for Arabic and for other things, it's always like that. Maybe one thing that usually concerns me when I talk about the RTL, how to deal with RTL localization when we have those special placeholders and HTML tags. Because again, based on my experience, it's always a pain point. It's always a pain point because you can provide the best translation ever, but since it has variables and those variables was not put in the right place, it might be not let's say the best translation we can have. So, for example, in Crowdin, when we talk about source elements, which include placeholders, variables, HTML tags, basically any extra information, any dynamic technical stuff which is not the source text, we would advise doing that thing. Let me see. We have like this, it's not a magic button, but for me it's really magic, copy source text. And then we always recommend RTL translators to very slightly simply substitute the source elements with the translation. I know it might look so perfect right now, but since the order of those placeholders, the order of those text is preserved in the translation, when developer would download translations from Crowdin and would integrate them into the app, translation will be always correct, always preserving those order of the tags or those order of the variables. that was supposed to be in the source files, in the source tags. So it means translation would never break the app, it would never crash anything, and basically this is the recommendation I could give to the RTL translators. Using this view for providing, and if you guys worried that you might miss up, just messed up a little bit with those things, I would just advise using copy source and then very accurately substituting the source text with the target local translation. And this way you can be sure nothing would be broken, nothing would be bad, everything should be really cool. Okay, let's jump to the next point, which is agile localization. I guess this part is pretty technical and I really like it actually. So when we are going to talk about agile localization, I just want to say that we really love this stuff. I mean, we do talk about Crowdin on the market as a tool for agile companies who work for the agile technologies and who also want to make agile localization. So when you guys start development of your application or development of new features, new integrations, there is no need to wait till, let's say, you have everything, written, checked, and only then start localization. No way to do that. You can start localization right the moment you start developing any features or start writing your code for the next integration. And we know how to handle it. We have a special system to handle duplicates. And just want to show you that localization can start at any point of the project, at any level. You don't need to have the keys. You don't need to have your source file to start localization, because if you have a designer who created a mock-up, like a preview how the application should look like, you can already translate. You don't need to have, those files integrated into Crowdin. You can start with your designers. And maybe just a few points to show the benefits of agile localization. Of course, it lets you combine development and localization process together. As I say, any feature branch, any version branch that you start, writing on a Git might be already, included into localization pipeline. So you don't need to wait till you finish development, merge your feature branch into master, and then, start translating. No, you can start translating right away. Translators can always access relevant text for translation, and that's very true, because whenever you update the key or you push new keys, everything can be automatically submitted to Crowdin. Right now, I'm talking about API, CLI, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket integrations, and those stuff that make the process going on. Then we have ability to check translations in the process rather than after release. And it's also very true, because those translations that you guys make in Crowdin, they usually automatically submitted to your repositories. So they can always rewrite, like the old version of translations and everything. So this way, having those continuous integration through the Git or through the API, you can always have translations, like the topical translations, updated. And the last point, it's improving localization on the fly. It's basically a summary of everything that we discussed. Whenever you see a mistake, a typo, you want to submit a new key, you do it right away. You don't need to wait till the whole project, is being done and submitted, and only then you start localization. No, you can do that right away. And right now, I want to talk about maybe a bit more technical stuff for developers who would need to take care of the localization text. In order to start with a GitHub, or any of these things, you guys would need to have source files. So it would be necessary to extract localization elements from your code and put it somewhere like a JSON, XML, YAML, QDTS files, spreadsheets, HTML, Markdown, or even docx files, whatever works fine for you. So whenever you do that, and let's say you have a separate repository with your localization resources, it's high time to use Crowdin, just to integrate those things. And I'd like to share an example on how to do that in my own project right now through the GitHub integration. What I like the most about this thing is that it's like really, really easy. I'm not a developer myself, but it takes like 2 minutes, okay, maybe not 2 minutes, but 5 minutes for me to set up the integration, and I think it's really cool. So what I've got here, I've got my GitHub account connected, and I did fork the repository of Visual Studio Code with their documentation. So I'd like just to show how does this stuff works. So Crowdin GitHub or Crowdin GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure Repo, CLI, or API integration. can be set up in order to provide, agile localization. And the GitHub, it's actually the easiest, just to compare to others integration stuff, because you just need to pick up your repository right here. Crowdin would display you all of the branches you have on the wrapper, so you can just, choose the branches you'd like to localize right away. For example, like I did with my master branch. What does Crowdin do then? Based on your master, we would create a localization branch, because all of the translations that are happening in Crowdin, we would never commit them directly to your master or any other base branch that you have on the repository, because, well, it's obviously dangerous. You might have, other stuff set up there. So we create our own localization branch where we would send you a pull request with Crowdin translations. If you're worried maybe about the access and like how Crowdin would know what to translate, what to not translate, that's because you might tell the system where you keep your source files. For example, here I did indicated a path to my source files like that. I wanted to translate a directory with release notes, and then I just, wanted to go ahead for everything that I had there, like for all my markdown files. It's definitely possible, to play with a path. So if you have like a very complicated tree, files tree and everything, it's still possible, to make it work the way that you like. So we would only look into the files that you want us to look at and translate, but Crowdin will not touch the rest. And basically, the same for translations. This way we know where to take the source files, like where they are, placed on GitHub, on the repo. And translated file path, it's about translations. Like, you can tell Crowdin that, hey, I want my translations to be placed into this folder, that I want to have a language code name to understand that, okay, it's Arabic localization, it's German, it's Japanese. And again, you can play with the path, you can play with the different patterns, you can, combine it in a way that is, just perfect for you. Here we go. And of course we have, we can have a lot of file filters like that. So it's not only, the single path that you can indicate, it's multiple paths to different for different file types, for different places. You can have it all together. Everything that I set up here will be saved. Actually, it is saved as Crowdin YAML file on my GitHub wrapper. So I can always edit my configuration not only in Crowdin but also in GitHub repository on my master branch. So basically that's it. What's needed just to set up the integration. And if to talk about synchronization rules, integration is fully automated, but you can also, change the default settings if you don't like them. For example, the source files, the source keys that you would keep on your repository, they would be automatically uploaded to Crowdin for localization. If you would update the source value on a GitHub, it's also going to be updated in Crowdin. And for translation, it's kind of the same. Whenever we have translation in Crowdin, it's going to be pushed back to the repository up to 1 hour. It's a default setting. If you want to make it faster, you can use 10-minute schedule, or you can even use sync now button. Well, it's a manual way. If you don't want to get those, frequent updates from Crowdin, a lot of comments from us saying that you have new translations, you can set up, let's say, a time schedule once per day. I mean, if it's okay to you and you don't want to get, spammed with our comments, it's good to have it this way. I'm going to set up to the 10-minute schedule, just to have it there. Plus, if you don't want Crowdin to push any translations to your repository at all, like it's good to have source files, pushed into Crowdin, but you don't want to get any translations, you can disable this option, and we will keep syncing your resources, but we will not, send you comments with the translation. So it's up to you how to make it work. So yeah, that's why I say that it takes like up to 5 minutes to set it up if you have a, if you have a prepared repository with source files. It's also a few more options here, like you can set up like a pattern for the new branches, automatically added into Crowdin for localization. You just need a pattern, and then whenever you create a new feature branch, it will be automatically set up for localization in Crowdin. You would not need to manually tickle it or somehow, edit it. It will be done, automatically. So just want maybe to show you guys how it would look like on GitHub.
In the meanwhile, we have a translated question. from Ukrainian. So is there a limitation for massive of data which you have in Crowdin?
Well, we have private companies, who buy subscriptions. So yes, they have some limitations how many keys they can push into Crowdin and translate. But for open source projects, we have open source license, which is for free. And we also have a free package and educational license. So there we don't have any limits. You can push as many files as you need, as many branches as you need, as many keys as you need. So I would say nope.
Cool. I hope this satisfied the question. I also had like a lot of questions about things that we've seen before. I think that, first of all, I really love the tool. I just read about it when we started talking about this event. So basically it's new to me also. You talked about like, for me, so I write, my mother tongue is Hebrew. So we also are writing the other way around, from right to left instead of left to right. So a lot of RTL problems. So I'm very familiar with it. And basically, one of the things that I thought about is sometimes even the dates, like the date format, or let's say, for example, currency or weight, height, can change, can vary, what we call locale, which is on top of localization, of course. So are you doing anything for that? Can I suggest, for example, like an equation for a variable that will change depending on the language or localization?
Yeah, but I think it's mostly linked to the source file type, because in order to provide, in order for the translator to be able to submit those, different variants of translation, it would be necessary also to pay attention to the file type, because some file types, they have this native attributes or special file structure that would allow developers to construct source files in a way that translator can submit this translation. I mean, this variance translation. So maybe I cannot, like give you a straight answer, like yes or no, but if the file type supports, those special attributes or those special things, then in Crowdin, translator will be always able to provide those variance translation. For example, again, the plural forms for Arabic, again, it's only about, singular plural forms, but we know that Arabic has like this many options. So we automatically provide translators, with an ability to provide this few suggestions. Gender-specific things, currency, date, and time, it's usually done through the ICU syntax. So again, it depends like how the source files are being constructed. Yeah, so
right.
it sounds a bit complicated, but
is it possible to, just out of curiosity, because of this whole thing, so is it possible, to create like an optional variable that might change between languages? Something that might be missing, for example, or
for like translator cannot do that because they don't have enough rights. Because usually, if translator would do that and project manager cannot control it, it might end up in an application being crashed. I mean, of course, I'm dramatic a little bit, but it's all depends. So for translator, they don't have such an option, unfortunately. But for those people who work with the resources, who generate source files, they have an ability to provide, some special construction, so then translators could submit, those different variables. But for translators, no, unfortunately, no.
Nice, pretty cool. Okay, so we have like one last question for now, and then I'll let you go on for a few minutes. So from our developer circle, so Casimir asked if I want to use Crowdin for localization for my project, should it be open sourced?
No, it shouldn't be open source. I just mentioned that we do have special open source license, but we also have a free package where you can have unlimited number of public projects. So you're welcome to go ahead. No need to have open source like wrap or something.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, we did have a discussion about the GitHub, and I just really, very quickly wanted to show you that you will get pull requests from Crowdin like that, new Crowdin updates. You can open it, you can look through the commits. If you like them, then you perform a merge to your base branch. You would have also like the file name and also the target language you're having commit for. And if you like everything, you can always create a merge request to your master branch, to develop branch, whatever is topical. But I would always recommend squashing and merging because, just to group all those commits and your history will not be, get all set with Crowdin commits. And one more thing, when you get translations from Crowdin to GitHub wrapper or any wrapper that, any service that you're using, I would always recommend deleting this temporary service, or as we call it, localization branch, because next time you're going to have new translations, Crowdin would create a new branch. So it's a process like that. We get translations from Crowdin, we review them, we merge them, we delete this temporary branch, and we wait for the new translations to come again to the repository. And when I was talking about agile localization, I also wanted to say that it's not only the source files, right, that we translate because we have them extracted from the code and everything. I mean, let's imagine a situation that we don't have source files at all. We just have our designer, right, created a mock-up or something, so we would know how those beautiful things would look like to the end users. So I just wanted to say that in Crowdin, it's possible to start localization simply having the mockups. If you guys using Figma, Sketch, Adobe XD, you can ask your designers to push those beautiful mockups into Crowdin, translate them, and then your designers would have completed localized versions. What I wanted to show you right now in this project, I also got a Figma here, for a very quick test. This is a frame, like a basic one, and I use Crowdin plugin in order to, just to push those mockups that I have into Crowdin for localization. So this very thing right now is already uploaded into my project. So I'm going to check how it looks like for translators. And what does this plugin do? It scans the frame from the Figma, Adobe XD, or Sketch. And for translators, it's really cool because they have the whole picture. They don't have single keys with no context, right? They have the whole picture. They can translate it. They can, they can see how it looks like. And what is more important, they can preview the German localization, Japanese hybrid localization, and they can understand, whether it fits, whether it's okay, whether nothing, was corrupted or everything. And then when translations are being done, I just use Google, to make it fast. We just open the plugin and we sync translations back to Figma. And this way, designers, they can also have localized versions of the frame. They don't need to wait till, let's say, some source keys would be translated and then somehow it will be integrated on a website, and only then they, open the landing page and they can see, oh my God, French localization does not fit into my button. No need, to wait for that stuff. While developers extracting the keys and translate them, the same is possible for designers. So they created a frame, they pushed it into Crowdin, and they had it back. And they can see that, oh, German localization, just perfect. No need to adjust anything, no need to make it work shorter, and things like that. So yeah, it's just an idea that localization might start at any point. So including the design part, development part, quality assurance, and just the idea itself. Talking about that, I would also just, would like to mention that it's not only like the GitHub and like design tools that we have integrations with. Nope. Crowdin is actually a tool that might be really nice for support team management, like, the knowledge base, like Zendesk and Weak Sensors. Also about apps description, like Google Play, App Store description, and stuff like that. We do have like the whole marketplace of different localization things, which can be used the integrations can be used, just to make the whole process really nice and really smooth for each part, for each role. What I mean here, we have integrations for developers, definitely, just to make their life easier. But we also have, really nice to have integrations for project managers to make their life easier, including Dropbox, Google Play, for tech guys, for content writers, we've got Contentful, and a lot of different stuff which you can pick up and simply, use in your localization project. You don't need to pay extra for those integrations, even in free package. I think API, all of the plugins, they are being already included. So I just, really encourage you to give it a try. Okay, what I got here, if you guys wondering how to start, maybe you don't have, anything prepared for localization, again, it would be maybe enough just to have your source files. I know that maybe it's not so easy, as it sounds, to get your source file, to get it from the code. But once you have at least something, or even the mockups, it's really easy, just to start doing that. So it's either files. If you don't have files, but you have, multiple keys, we've got a string-based API, so you can also, go into experiments and play with things a little bit. Basically, if you don't want to get into any technical integrations at all, you can simply push your files manually, like drag and drop them from your computer, or create files online in Crowdin, like a spreadsheet files. It's also possible. Or if you have your files or your keys on Google Drive, like a Excel spreadsheet, you can also just use Google Drive integration, and just push it back into Crowdin, back and forth of the systems. Yep.
I'll jump in for a few questions.
Sure.
So how do you become a reviewer for an open source GitHub project?
Reviewer. If it's a crowdsource project, let's say like Electron from the GitHub, or for example, Minecraft, usually it's a project manager of the project who might notice that you're like really active contributor and you're doing a lot, and they can make you a proofreader. You cannot become a proofreader on your own, simply like, hey, I want to be a proofreader, and that's it. You would need an approval of the project manager. But if you really want to be the person, who's really passionate about that, you can leave a comment to the project manager saying, hey, I'm so dedicated, please make me a proofreader because I want to, I want to improve the quality of translations. So it can be done right here in the comment section. If you're worried that project manager might not notice, the comment that you want to become a proofreader, each project in Crowdin have this contact information of the project owner and managers. And you can always contact these people, sending a request for being a proofreader. But again, even being a translator, you can still become a proofreader because you can upvote and downvote, for translations done by other people. A proofreader's role, it means you can validate, like you decide this translation is going to be taken for export. But as a translator, you can simply like and dislike the translations by other people.
All right. Another question from Anna Linchak. So what is the effect of voting for the translation if the translated text already in the master branch?
So what is the? I'm sorry, just would need to repeat that.
What does it do if I like vote a translation while it's already in the master branch? What's the effect on it?
Well, if translation is already merged, let's say you got a string translated, you merge the translation, and then somebody is voting saying, hey, your merged translation is not okay. This one, the next one is better. Like, and it has a lot of those upvotes, like 15, 100. Then Crowdin would send you the a pull request with a new translation, like proposing that new translation would override the translation that you already have in master branch. But it really depends. It really depends on the proto that you have in your project, because you, for example, can set this partial export option that you want, for example, export only approved translations. So what I'm saying here, it's really a lot to talk about. It depends on your workflow, but if you already have a merged translation and somebody says another translation is better, I think I'm pretty sure GitHub will send you a new pull request with a new proposed translation, which you can either deny or accept. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, is that it? Okay, then let's go ahead. I mean, this is the last thing for today, I promise. I know that I guess everybody's pretty tired after work today. It's an in context for web apps. I mean, for the last hour, I've been talking, you know, how it's easy to translate in Crowdin and everything, but what is more easier even, or even maybe better, it's in-context localization. Let's imagine your translators don't need to log in into Crowdin and they don't need to work with single keys translation. What they can do instead, they can open your website and translate every button on your website. Well, it sounds like a paradise, and actually it is, especially for translators and for project managers who don't need to upload screenshot and provide extra context information. In-context localization. It's this thing that basically looks like that. It's an example of Microsoft MakeCode project. They have their website placed under Mirror website, and they translate everything using in context. So their translators, they don't use, you know, they don't log in into Crowdin and translate single keys. They come up here, they pick up the language they want, you know, to make some contributions for, and then they simply pick up the string they would like to translate, and they provide the translation like that. They can save it. And I mean, this way they can have the whole context, the whole length issues, the whole, I don't know, visual representation covered, because this way it's really easier, you know, to translate rather than looking into single keys. This technology, it works for web applications, and it requires a little bit of help of the developer to make it work, but it's not so complicated, really, it's not. And such teams as like Microsoft, we also have other customers like private companies who use this technology. I'm afraid I cannot, you know, share it with you right now, but for Microbit, it was really cool. A lot of translations were done in this special environment, and I know that translators, I mean, they really like it because they don't need to look into the that. They don't need to work like with keys and tags. They work with the UI, right? They have everything on their plate and they can see like what they're doing. If you guys may be interested, whether something like that might work for mobile apps, I think, yeah, in Crowdin we do have special SDK for Android and for iOS right now, just for these two, that would also have like this special preview option for translators on their mobiles or in the emulators that would basically have the same environment. It's like a mirror project, but every button, every option on your website is being clickable, is being translatable. So basically translators are really happy having that option. Okay, and I guess that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening for such a long time to my talking. I hope I did not bore you. Hope everything was clear. Yeah, I just wanted to say that if there are any kind of questions, I am, you know, more than happy to answer them. And please feel free to drop, you know, any comments on Facebook or YouTube. Yeah, I can also personally answer everything, you know, on comments after the session.
All right. For now, it seems that we've answered everything, I think.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was very interesting. I loved it. It's super relevant for me because I'm working on one end, I'm working on iOS apps, so like tons of them. So I need a tool like this because I've already like failed localizing even when I am the translator because I know like 2 languages. So most of us here are bilingual at least, so we know at least 2 languages. So for all of us, it's super relevant. So it was really cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for the other hosts that helped me. Tomka, Enzo, thank you everyone.
Thank you guys.
And I'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.